Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review The Accursed. And this is a new horror film from director Kevin Lewis, focusing on a young woman who was asked by a family friend after the death of her mother to come and watch this elderly woman out in the middle of the woods, all secluded by herself for a couple days, which sounds so smart. And her best friend drops her off for this job, and of course, weird stuff starts happening. Now, this film starts off with a little prologue that is really creepy and engaging and interesting, and I'm like, okay, I can get on board with this. This seems interesting. But then, boom, almost the whole rest of the film barely alludes to that until we get to the third act of the film. And to be honest, that whole prologue and everything setting up feels a little tacked on at that point and a little bit just thrown in there. And I found that pretty disappointing in terms of, like, you had this interesting setup, but you don't really incorporate it into the main story in a interesting and impactful way. And it leaves you wanting, like, some kind of real payoff for that. But you have the rest of this film, and the setup is very obvious. It's like, you know, weird stuff's going to happen. You know something's not right with this old lady. They have some interesting visuals of, like, hands coming out of mouths and stuff like that. Like demonic hands and claws. And that's a running trope throughout the film in terms of, like, the representation of what's really going on here and used for a scare. And you know, this film really lives and dies by a lot of horror tropes and cliches, and that's a shame because not only that, because it makes it so predictable, but then even when it actually hits, the director, I don't know, really captures how terrifying some of these setups can be. It all feels kind of like, well, been there, done that kind of thing. Now, we do feel a connection to Elly, played by Sarah Gray, our main character here. And we understand, like, she lost her mother. There's a lot of trauma there. Her father left. And you find out that there's a greater context to the story of, like, how she fits into this. And that has some potential and some interesting ways it could have played out. But you know, it gets explained and laid out in the most exposition-heavy, obnoxious way possible. And you do, like, her friend who, like, drove her here and is trying to support her. I like her as a character. There's a few characters that you can attach to here. You even have, like, Mena Suvari, who was from, like, American Pie. She's the woman that called up Elly and was like, hey, I need you to watch my mother. And you have this whole entire setup here where this secluded place, creepy old lady, you expect things, the visuals are, like, dark and eerie, so that works, that's enticing. But in the end, the film gets a little messy trying to combine our main story and this prologue setup that we have in the film, where it kind of feels like that's just tacked on, and the characters they set up in the prologue just show up to spout exposition, and one of them's not exactly the strongest performer either. It's a little stiff, so, like, that kind of takes you out of the film. But in general, there's some haunting and disturbing visuals here, even all the way up to the final shot of the film will get you a bit. But this film is okay. It has some elements that work. It has a lot of things that we expect, and this kind of drags. But if you're really into horror films, I think you'll find some stuff to enjoy about it. I don't think this particular film is going to win a whole lot of extra people who are like, oh, I might go check out some other horror films. But those are my thoughts on The Accursed. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.